My topic today is bridges to nowhere, your tax dollars at work. When I talk about energy transition bridges to nowhere, I'm referring to solar, wind, hydrogen, carbon capture, and other projects subsidized and promoted by our government that are being canceled or delayed for an unspecified period of time. This relates to energy resource adequacy if we are counting on resources that don't materialize. I'm not talking about individuals cashing in on government subsidies for rooftop solar. I'm also not referring today to utility scale solar and wind facilities such as we see today with our electrical co-ops, investor-owned utilities, or small green qualifying facilities. I am referring to massive million and billion dollar projects in the planning stages that typically only billion and trillion dollar multinational corporations can afford to invest in. So these are some of the plans on paper. Why are these projects going nowhere? Again, referring to these multi-million, multi-billion dollar projects purported to be needed to prevent climate catastrophe. Why are they going nowhere? One reason is unrealistic, inadequate planning, inflation and interest rate issues, supply chain issues, inadequate transmission lines. I will address each of these reasons why some energy projects are bridges to nowhere. So unrealistic vision and inadequate planning. I'm going to spend more time on this category of reasons for bridges to nowhere because the other categories I have either covered in prior presentations or will cover them in more detail in future presentations. An example of unrealistic vision and inadequate planning is hydrogen for fuel. The hydrogen vision. Hydrogen is the most abundant chemical substance in the universe, constituting 75% of all normal matter. It is considered possibly the fuel of the future and a transformational opportunity. The International Energy Agency, or IEA, says hydrogen is a versatile energy carrier which can help tackle various critical energy challenges. IEA also says hydrogen-powered vehicles would improve air quality and promote energy security. Via the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Department of Energy is investing up to $8 billion to form the foundation of a national clean hydrogen network that will contribute substantially to decarbonizing multiple sectors of the economy. So we've got this act, plus the IRA, ARPA, and other sources of funding for the hydrogen vision. Millions and billions and trillions of taxes of your hard-earned money, on your hard-earned money. Headline, Hunter Hydrogen Hub announced, NSW government committing at least $70 million. Another headline, massive green hydrogen hub in Utah wins $504 million federal loan guarantee. These are just a few of the many headlines I've seen. University of Illinois in Chicago, my alma mater, joins alliance to create Midwest Hydrogen Hub. Another headline. The alliance will collaborate on building the clean hydrogen supply, storage, infrastructure, distribution, networks, technology implementation, and regional market necessary to create a sustainable hydrogen economy. People with the hydrogen vision talk about it as though it is something new and exciting. In reality, the process of using hydrogen to generate electricity is not new. It goes back to 1838. Headline, hedge fund boss slams hydrogen bets as complete waste of time. This was in Bloomberg just 2 days ago. Hydrogen is a losing bet for investors interested in making money in the foreseeable future, according to founder and chief investment officer of United Kingdom hedge fund Argonaut Capital Partners. Same article. The U.S. and other governments have announced over $280 billion in subsidies to the low-carbon hydrogen sector, a quadrupling since 2021. Meanwhile, manufacturers of electrolyzers are starting to acknowledge that their optimism has run too far and are slowing down expansion. Hydrogen vision or hydrogen blinders. The IEA says clean hydrogen produced with renewable or nuclear energy or fossil fuels using carbon capture can help to decarbonize a range of sectors, including long-haul transport. The IEA says hydrogen can also support the integration of variable renewables in the electricity system, being one of the few options for storing energy over days, weeks, or months. This vision, the wonderful dream that abundant, lightweight hydrogen through thoroughly, totally clean green processes will fuel cargo ships, long-distance trucking, air transport, race cars, and school buses. In reality, over 95% of hydrogen-based fuel produced today utilizes hydrocarbons, primarily natural gas, for its extraction. Extraction is a required process in order to use hydrogen for fuel. Let that sink in. Greater than 95% utilizes hydrocarbons like natural gas. Back to this article. It concisely summarizes the negative reviews I have read the last year about green hydrogen hubs. Hydrogen for electricity, as I said, has been used since 1938, and it is used effectively to this day. The complete waste of time in this headline is referring to green hydrogen. Here's a quote from the article. The cleanest form is known as green hydrogen, whereby an electrolyzer powered by renewable energy is used to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. That process is costly. Other challenges include storing it in a way that makes its use viable for things like moving vehicles. If you have hydrogen produced by weather-dependent power, which refers here to wind and solar, your capacity utilization is going to be structurally much lower than that produced by baseload power. Baseload power referring to compatibility of hydrogen sources. Baseload power referring to compatibility of hydrogen with hydrocarbons such as coal. Argonaut Capital Partners founder and chief investment officer says he, quote, can't imagine hydrogen that's powered by renewable being a financially viable alternative. It will never be cost competitive if they're powered by wind and solar. And what's the point if they're not powered by wind and solar? So this is private sector, boots on the ground. With hydrogen as a fuel source, obviously, they have a different opinion than the IEA. $280 billion in subsidies given to the low carbon hydrogen sector, so green hydrogen. Taxes on your hard-earned money funding bridges to nowhere. Hundreds of billions of dollars towards unrealistic, poorly planned projects. Inflation and rising interest rates are big issues, slowing and potentially stopping energy-related and other projects. This article bears a description of how inflation impacts renewable energy projects. The name of the title of the article, Inflation and its Impact on the Renewable Energy Market. Price volatility. This is one way that inflation affects the renewable market. Future claims become more expensive, particularly for projects with multi-year construction periods, where assets are valued at the start of the construction period. Operational efficiency is another impact. Ambitious targets, quote, are leading to a lack of personnel and the required skill set and experience to construct or operate such solar wind farms, which in turn can lead to a higher chance of poor workmanship or accidents taking place on site. For examples of the impact of inflation on these failed and failing energy projects, headline, U.S. offshore wind projects facing inflation headwinds. This is from Reuters just 2 days ago. The U.S. has no large-scale commercial wind farms in operation today. Some 27 contracts had been signed. However, inflation, supply bottlenecks, and higher financing costs have eroded profitability of many projects, forcing some to cancel, while others are still seeking to renegotiate the terms. That's from this article. It also says some developers are pressing officials to ease requirements for subsidies under the IRA. Even billions in subsidies for startups is apparently not enough. They ask for more. They ask for more, even though printing money without acquiring equal offset value at the same time devalues their funds. If the government gives money printed for the project, each time it does that, all the more so if it asks for money serially, it devalues the money already in the project, such that additional printed money does not make up for it. For example, if the developer gets $100 million subsidy, and that's not enough because of what they call inflation, the price due to devaluation of the dollar, he has to have printed another $50 million, and that devalues the project's dollars further. They need to ask more, and the cycle can go on and on. Supply chain issues are a huge concern with solar and wind energy projects. Many speakers and organizations, including the IEA, have issued warnings about mineral shortages. I have covered this cause of difficulty getting energy projects completed in my presentation about mining minerals. Electric cars, solar and wind power require more of these minerals than conventional cars and hydrocarbon and nuclear sources of power. I discussed it also in my presentations about transformers, semiconductors, inverters, and lithium batteries. I also discussed the forecast of critical shortages of these minerals needed for those essential items. And to get to these minerals, we are relying on China, Iran, and Russia, countries few people would consider our closest allies. Supply chain shortfalls turn into supply chain impossibilities, turn into project impossibilities. Inadequacy of transmission lines can be caused by permitting delays, energy litigation, regulatory, and other squabbles. These problems seem insurmountable at times, making it seem impossible to get the transmission lines needed for energy expansion. Inadequacy of transmission lines has more adverse effect on solar and wind projects than other energy projects. Why is that? Many reasons, including but not limited to possibly hundreds of thousands more miles of transmission lines to reach from rural areas where sun and wind can best be tapped, taking that to cities where the energy is most needed. Headline states reimagine power grids for wind and solar future. To unblock the full emissions reduction potential of the IRA, the pace of transmission expansion must more than double the rate over the last decade to rate of expansion comparable to the long-term average rate of transmission additions from 1978 to 2020. This is from Princeton University Zero Lab, which is a green energy advocate, and even they say that we will need to double the rate of expansion of transmission lines. The cost of upgrading electricity transmission, an estimated $314 to $504 billion in capital cost on top of the estimated $1.8 to $2.1 trillion in new generation costs necessary to attain the 2035 carbon goal. Hundreds of billions of dollars needed to pay for transmission upgrades for these subsidized green projects. Investor-owned utilities and electric co-ops don't have this kind of money typically to spend, so they will rely on government grants and loans to the extent that they include green energy. Hundreds of billions of dollars, and it's ultimately you who pay the bill. Ultimately, all this cost falls on the backs of the hardworking taxpayers, you and me, through taxes and through the value depreciation of your money and property. This is true whether the projects succeed or go belly up. And without adequate transmission lines, many of the projects are currently dormant and will in the future fail. When government policies don't make sense, I ask myself, who benefits? When I ask who benefits, the answer to that question usually, if not always, leads me to at least a plausible explanation. Cui bono is the Latin term for who benefits. In English, to whom is it a benefit, is a Latin phrase about identifying crime suspects. It depends on the fact that crimes are often committed to benefit their perpetrators, especially financially. It is not we the people who benefit. When the half-built bridge to nowhere collapses, when the bridge to nowhere energy project is half finished, the contractor, typically a multinational corporation working on the energy project, will still get paid. There have been many events in history that cause one group of people to lose their possessions and lifestyle, while another group gains from the same event with no benefit whatsoever to those who lost. Could the Green New Deal be not only the latest, but in all of history, the greatest transfer of the value of our money and property to others? Follow the money and the power associated. Multinational corporations cannot start these green energy projects to nowhere without public officials of both major political parties supporting government funding programs and pet projects. Many public officials collect campaign contributions from and do backroom deals with representatives of these multinational corporations. Cooperation, some would call it collusion, between government officials and multinational corporation representatives are necessary for bridge to nowhere energy projects to continue. Thank you so much for caring.